to my students and say, did you actually paint those with your hands with brushes? Like, that cafe Lido is done with a stable brush. And they said, no way, you know, what is it, done with a computer? There was no computer in 1979. So, these are all Xeroxes, cut paper, so it was really worth a lot. And then I went to graduate school after 6 months in San Francisco, went to Frankfurt. This is sort of the image of the school, the Triton Fountain. And I did this project in 1981. Now, this is to me my first foray to understanding typography. There's type and there's typography. And for me, typography is really about language. You know, it's about syntactic and semantic. You know, syntax meaning like how do they look? How is the organization of these letter forms on the page? But also what do they mean? You know, so when you talk about syntax, it's really about like what is it? So this might think you might think that this is really kind of it's just playing the letter. It's actually a study of a street, a very busy street in Detroit, where we selected any kind of block that had a lot of establishment, and to essentially peel away all the elements that were typographic, and then try and assess them. So I tried to organize them. You know, there were a lot of animal stores, you know, fish stores, you know, things, and then the G's for goods. There was a dry goods store and a drugstore, and then the S would be for services like dry cleaners and parking, and so. This is the way to organize information. It's a very simple kind of process, I think, but to explode typography in a way that isn't on a straight line, but to dissect it in a way that was much more about, you know, the layout, was for me kind of the touchstone of how I started to think about typography beyond, you know, the Western way of reading left to right, top to bottom. You know, so I realized this sort of like put me in a place where maybe that's, you know, it's sort of like coming to reverence in a way. So there's New York the first year, first time in 1982. I was, you know, young and sort of like, I looked at New York and I thought, my God, it's like Manila, it's just bigger. You know? So I felt more at home in New York than I did in San Francisco. I thought, how come nobody's walking the streets in San Francisco? And for me, New York was really the sort of, you know, people say, okay, it's a crazy city, but I think for us, if you were born in Manila and you were raised here, you find an affinity that sort of pulsing dynamic of the